everybody. So this is a very exciting day, as all of them are, I guess, for me. So we're again cooking from the Forks and Knives Flavor Cookbook. We're actually making 2 recipes at once. So I've done a lot of prep already, just so that this video doesn't get too long. But one of them is a Mexican chopped salad. So it's going to end up looking like this. There's roasted veggies in there, which are actually currently roasting now, and then a bunch of other Mexican-y type things. The other one is a tamale pie. So that's the final product. You see there's like a cornmeal crust on top with a filling. And so I have also prepped our crusts ahead of time, and we're about to make the filling for that tamale pie. So I've got a pan warming here on the stove. And where am I? To make the filling, combine onion, garlic, and a 1/4 cup of water in a large non-stick saute pan and cook it for 10 minutes. So I'm once again making a triple batch, cooking for both myself and some friends of ours. So I'm just going to add 3/4 cup of water. I'll just step out of frame for a minute to get that water in the pan, which is already warmed. I went ahead and peeled my onions and my garlic because that'll also help us to go faster. Now, I buy a lot of my veggies in bulk, and so sometimes when that's the case, like right now there's some middle part that's not so good. I just take out whatever's not great and I put it to the side. Just in case, you know, there's like ways in which not everything is ever perfect. So kind of a metaphor for life, actually. Not everything is ever perfect. So our usual cutting, that usual base onion is part of so many things. In fact, right, even the salad that the roasting vegetables are doing right now was a foray into pearl onions. I bought fresh pearl. You can buy them frozen. The benefit to buying them frozen is you won't have to peel them. But it occurs to me now I'm going to probably want to like grab a recipe for a stew or something that additionally calls for those pearl onions. But people love to use them because you can have that whole onion look in your dish, and they're kind of sweet that way. They're just kind of fun. So my onion goes in. Again, this is going to be a triple batch, and I'm going to cross my fingers that this saute pan is big enough. It's actually a really large saute pan, which I bought purposely because we have a large family and we cook a lot. But the downside is you have to pick that up every time that you use it. So I spend a lot of my time going, why? Okay, this is 12 cloves of garlic. Each one got 4. And I'm just going to remind everybody again, if this feels like a step you don't want to take on any given week, you could have your garlic, you could pre-chop it when you do prep work and have it set aside. A lot like these recipes in the flavor book also say about a teaspoon or something like that. Or you could just estimate, because again, this is for flavor. That's why that cookbook in particular is called Flavor. When I cook from the How Not to Die cookbook, the aim of that particular cookbook is health, right? Getting a well-rounded meal that has a lot of components that are good for you. When I cook from the whole bowls, the point is to get everything that you need, similar to How Not to Die, in one bowl, so that, you know, in theory, bowl meals are kind of easy, you know, like informal meals that you might have at the table. You could eat them anywhere, standing, sitting. Obviously, people they frown on standing and eating all your meals, but sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes we're going to stand and eat a meal. It's how it goes. And with something like this tamale pie, the great thing is, like, I'm making 2. I don't think that we're going to eat 2 tonight. I think I'm going to have leftovers, which means that there's food, like I'm cooking it on a Friday. On a Saturday when I'm out doing things or I want to be a little lazier, there's all these leftovers in the fridge that we can just fall back on. So I go ahead and get all of those going. Let me turn my heat up a little bit more. Garlic makes your hands really sticky, so I'm going to quick do a rinse. You'll see I have a lot of stuff out on the counter because it's going to help me go faster as we're talking. So as this is sauteing, again, because we're going with that whole plant-based thing, this is a water saute as opposed to a oil saute. I did actually, in roasting the vegetables that are in the oven, go ahead and use just a little bit of oil because I find that roasting dry creates a really dry vegetable, which nobody really wants. Not really the greatest. So let's see. While this is going and getting warm, so we have a lot of stuff we're going to end up adding to this. We have stirring occasionally, add a little extra water if you need to. As that onion is getting tender, add bell peppers, zucchini, corn, tomato paste, oregano, and more water and cook for 5 minutes until everything's absorbed. So we're using a lot of stuff here. Our onions and our garlics, and we need 6 bell peppers, 6 bell peppers, 6 zucchini, a ton of corn. We won't even go that far yet. Let me grab peppers. We haven't done peppers together. So, also, I get to show you the roasted veggies. They're coming out in about half a minute. So again, it's not like anybody pays me to tell you about how great these bags are, but I had 2 other peppers in here, and there's like room to spare. These things are just amazing. So, I actually want to talk about how I cut a pepper because everybody has a way to cut everything. And my feeling is there are no right or wrong ways. There's no point in judging yourself on the matter. Okay, I get to show you these vegetables. They're going to be so amazing. You just wait and see. I'm going to pull it down so you can see them in there now. This is set at 500 degrees, by the way. So we have zucchini, peppers, pearl onions, and grape tomatoes or cherry tomatoes, all with just a sprinkle of salt and a sprinkle of oil. That's going to go on top of our salad. And you could have certainly used a smaller pan, but I was making a double batch. So I'm going to let that cool here on the stove. And my tamale pie is actually going to go at 350. So I'm just going to change that over to a 350. The oven's going to be like, I'm 500, I'm good to go. Okay, so I want to talk to you about peppers for a moment. People do it all kinds of ways. I see people cut off the top and then pull out the guts. I don't like all that behavior, so I tend to cut making an angle and go down into it, trying to avoid the white rib. And then once I've got one cut, I can see the white ribs. So then I just go around making a similar cut as I go and then cut out the rib. That's how I do it. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it anyway. That's the beauty. But then in terms of how these need to look in the pan, cord seated and diced. So I'm going to do kind of a wide dice. I have a lot of peppers to put in here. So throw it in. And while we're doing that, I think it's also important to recognize sometimes when I do these videos, I prep things ahead of time so they can all go in. My general way of cooking is what you see here. While my onion's cooking, I'm prepping another ingredient to go into the pot. That's a little risky business because all that food that's in there is going to be cooking while other stuff isn't in yet, so it has the potential to cook unevenly. For my feelings about it, it just doesn't matter enough. It's just not important. So I don't worry about it. I allow some things to maybe cook a little bit more than others and let the texture be the variety in the world. Also, I like to believe that it doesn't take me that long to chop things up. Maybe I'm delusional, who knows, but I like to believe that it is the case that it's not taking me 15 minutes to cut up my peppers and all that jazz. But I do move it along. I don't just like get distracted and go do something else. I've certainly sat in kitchens with people where they're doing something and then they're like, oh, and they go do something else. Where are you going? You're in the middle of your cooking. So, but I'm sort of a rules-based person, which is helpful to know and to keep in mind. If I'm on this task, this is what I think I'm doing right now. So that's 2. I have 5 peppers, and I'm so not going to sweat it that I don't have 6. Not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. And honestly, feel free to see it that way yourself. Also, a note with peppers, right? Like, you could buy pre-diced in the fresh section if you're having a busy week. You could buy frozen. So never feel, I don't mind buying my things fresh. I find all this chopping a therapeutic way for me to work my life out, to think about things that are happening. I often even use it, so I write sermons. It's like a large part of my work week, something I have to make sure happens every week. I use time like this to think about, how is this thing that I'm talking about relevant in the world? What else do I want to say? So some people think, oh, working from home, maybe I would be not so productive because I would clean my house. Someone actually did say that to me. I would start cleaning my house or something. The horror. I find that useful when I'm sitting there wondering, how am I going to apply these things or link these things? I might go ahead and grab a broom or do a bunch of dishes quick and just talk through it. I love talking to myself, I won't lie. I like to think in the car when I talk to myself that people will just assume I'm on Bluetooth, but I don't know. Also, just by the way, like, my 11-year-old, I was holding her hand at the bus stop today because there was a car that clearly did not want to stop for that bus, and I was worried about her. And so once the car had passed, I was still holding her hand, and she told me to stop. Mom, stop holding my hand. And I laughed so hard because every parent knows that this is coming, but you don't know when. Here we are. We've made it. We've arrived. This one has a bit of a boo-boo on the end, so I'm going to cut that off. It's not going to go. Make sure that you get all of it when you cut it off. And then I'm going to go ahead. Now I can see the ribs since I cut off my bottom. So I cut this one a little differently. But that's the thing. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. Also, in terms of knives, my husband's parents bought me these kind of non-serrated ones. For a good 15 years, all I had was serrated knives. These, I think, need to be sharpened. It's questionable whether or not I should work with sharp or dull knives because I tend to cut myself, but use what you got. I think if you make such a big deal, like, oh, I can't do it because I don't have this thing or that. Like, for instance, I was making the harissa marine. Right? So in that cornmeal topping, there's a fine ground cornmeal and there's a coarse ground, almost polenta or whatever. Then there's a 1/3 cup of almond flour, a cup and a half of vegetable stock, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. It's going to give it a little rise. I used the food processor with its dough blade. Honestly, you could just as easily stir it up. No big deal. Let me grab the zucchini. Come on over with me. So, zucchini this week at the grocery store. Wowzers, they were huge. Look at the size of this thing. So, I'm not even sure if I'll use all of them, but the recipe calls for 2 medium zucchini that are diced. So I might only use maybe 4. These are really big. You don't want to overpower it, so I'll just keep 2 for later. Zucchini is one of those things too where if you overcook it, it gets kind of limp, mushy, gross. So with my zucchini, I cut off the ends for sure. Sometimes I wonder why I've cut off the back end. I could just leave it until I get to the end, but it's done now. So, when cutting the zucchini in a diced fashion, quote unquote, I cut it in half like you just see there. And then I'm going to cut it in thirds. And then I'm just going to go the full length. And you can do this in a rocking motion and make fast work of the whole thing. Now, if this was a smaller zucchini, I might not have cut it in thirds, just to say. You may have chose to leave it as was, or you may have chose to cut it only in half. So you kind of got to decide how big do you want the chunk to be. Also, that side was a little thicker, so it feels to me like cutting this one only in half and not in thirds is the way to go. Other people I know, they're really picky about texture, and so when they dice something, they're going to go for that literal square-looking dice. It's fine. It just takes longer to do, and I'm all about efficiency. So when people ask me, how do you do it? Well, that's one of the things. I don't worry about, is it perfectly square? Also, I suppose you could buy machines that do that now. We had one. This one's so big, I'm going to cut it in fours. We had one of those that you go, psh, and it cuts everything into these perfect shapes. It died, like, right away. I think we overused it somehow. So I didn't repurchase because it wasn't good quality. But I see them on TV, and I've wondered, like, oh, maybe they've improved. Maybe I would like that, and it would save me time. But I only think about it. I never actually buy it because you'll recall there is a rule in this house right now. No small appliances can come in unless you get rid of something else. We have no more space. Okay, so this one I'll cut into thirds because it's a little thinner. And I'm just going to go right down the rib as fast as I can, honestly. My fingers are well out of the way, so I don't have to really worry about it. So this is going to create on the inside. Tamale, I'm sure, normally has a ton of meat as your filling. So we are replacing that meat with beautiful veggies. It's a little better for your arteries, is the reality. So this book that I read, How Not to Die, they talk about how when you eat something that is super fatty, the arteries immediately get stiffer as your body tries to process that meal. The blood flow has trouble making its way, pumping like it would normally do. And that over time, right, we just keep building up a larger and larger layer of plaque until eventually, right, like heart disease is a really big deal in our country. And people are coming up with all kinds of ways to try to deal with that reality for themselves. This is one of the ways we are trying to deal with that reality. It doesn't mean that we never eat French fries. The guy who wrote the How Not to Die book, I don't think that guy ever eats French fries. He's pretty serious. We are less serious, but we are trying to be more serious, right? At least give our bodies a break. I'm on my last zucchini. Very exciting. I'm going to cut this one into thirds too. Zucchini, you know, it's sort of like a cucumber. There's not a ton going on in there. It's reasonable filler, but what did I make the other day? I made something, and in the afterthought, I thought, you know, I could have just thrown in some spinach. That would have added a really good leafy green, extra vitamin-y thing. So even with all these recipes, if you are shooting for a little more health, throw in a little spinach at the end, or some red cabbage, or something to that effect. Something that gives you a little extra vegetable. Just yesterday, you know, I bought all these extra vegetables. I don't know why. They weren't on the menu, so I don't know when I thought I was going to use them. But I boiled them all up or steamed them up depending on, like, so I did a parboil for some and a steam for others. So here we are. You can see this is getting really full, as it should be. We're almost done adding ingredients. My zucchini, though, needs to get incorporated in, keeping in mind it is a delicate vegetable that can easily just cook down to nothing. So in this case, it probably is wise to have the rest of your ingredients prepped so that those zucchini don't sit in there too long. But peppers, onions, very traditional Mexican feel. And beautiful, right? Like when you are serving your family a big pile of beautiful, you can really feel excited about that. Okay, what's coming next? Zucchini, corn, tomato paste. How much corn? 1.5 cups of fresh corn. So we have frozen corn, that's our fresh. I have a lot of it. So 1.5 cups, that's 3, 4.5. I need 4.5 cups of corn. Go ahead and throw in I'm gonna throw corn around. It's just gonna be crazy in here. We have a child who does not like corn very much. Texture is a really big deal. So I'm kind of thinking about that as I put this in here. Hopefully some of the other aspects of it will make it a little more fun. Okay, so the corn is in. I might just give that a stir because the corn is a little frozen still, but I can show you what's going on. That's going to add just a little bit more color still. Pretty soon we're going to add this tomato paste and some spices. But this filling is going to go into 3 pies. So stir that around. We're going to have black beans in our salad too, which is going to be a nice protein component. Probably a reason that I chose to do that actually. You can see I've got my little compost pile. I'm making a big mess over here. Zucchini, corn, tomato paste. Okay, it is a ½ cup of tomato paste. I refuse to go through each of these and be like, was that a ½ cup? We're putting in 3 cans of tomato paste. That's what's happening. So I pre-opened them for us. But I have nothing to do with unused tomato paste. Like, I might cook with tomato paste one day and then not have a recipe that calls for it for another couple of days. So if I'm opening and it calls for like a tablespoon of tomato paste, one thing that I might do is purposely pick another recipe in that week when I do my menu that includes tomato paste. Otherwise, I just feel like it goes to waste. I have heard that if you buy it in the tube, it's more expensive, but it lasts longer. So, but a ½ cup is quite a bit. So, what I've also found is tomato paste is so thick. So to deal with that, I usually like spread it out a little bit first, just to make it easier to incorporate in a minute. And let me see what else we're gonna add besides this. Oregano, yay oregano, how much? 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, so a lot of oregano, as you will find in dishes like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That might as well get stirred around. And then it's gonna end up being 3 cups of water because I'm making that triple batch. So I'm gonna stir that around a bit, get it incorporated. This is honestly one of the harder parts, right? If you're thinking like, what's hard? It's not dicing vegetables. It's incorporating your tomato paste in a way that makes you feel like it's evenly distributed, amazingly enough. So, around and around. This is a really full pot, so that's kind of on me, but it was intentional. It is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and push some of that down. You kind of get a little messy in cooking. Your hands get dirty a lot, so if you have sensory challenges, which I kind of do, just to say, that'll be something that you'll be thinking about. Like, ew, my hands are dirty. I don't like dirty hands. Okay, that's at least more incorporated than it was. Let me grab my water. You can enjoy that beautiful picture of food while I'm away. We're at 2 cups. We're at 3 cups. And the crowd goes wild. So the water is going to go in. And the goal is for these vegetables to absorb this water, for this to get nice and thick. And it's going to get thick because that's why you're using so much tomato paste. I often keep my handle in the back so that nobody pulls the pots off the stove, that I don't catch it when I'm running by and knock everything off the stove. That's just a technique that I use. Folding is this business of like coming from the bottom and bringing over the top. So I'm sort of folding in that tomato paste still, trying to get it all interconnected. And that 6 teaspoons of oregano may have seemed like a lot at the time. Notice how in such a large amount you can't even see it. It's not even visible. So going around, again, that tomato paste has to find its way into that water, incorporate around all of those veggies. And you can see this is going to be so beautiful. And then once we are reasonably mixed in, then we can start to assemble this salad. So I've already chopped the lettuce for us, so it's really going to be a dump experience with the salad. Also, a meal like this, I already knew it's a little bit more intensive. I pick a day where that will work for me. So, you know, there's going to be days where I cannot spend too much time. This one is a day where it's like, okay, I'm going to make sure I've got as much of my work done as possible so I can have this relaxing experience of making a really fun meal that's going to feel special. So not every meal gets the same amount of attention for sure. Okay, I'm going to leave that go. And while that's doing its thing, we're going to transfer over to our Mexican salad. So let me grab, I'm going to pull you up because that's doing its thing right now. So I'm going to get these lettuces. One for me and one in a to-go container. The great thing about these, by the way, if you are interested in being one of those Save the Planet people, if you just rinse this, don't put it in a dishwasher, and you don't get it like too bent, it's totally reusable. If you do wash it out, it's also recyclable. So the base is there. Each of these gets a cup of corn. So I have 2 corns going here. I'm just going to half and half it. I'm going to be careful. Some water has gotten along the bottom because this was draining. You can also use fresh corn. You could cut it right off the cob. And in fact, you know, I think in the book picture, that's exactly what they did. So then it's a boat ton. It is so much black beans. It's a full can of black beans. So I've drained 2 cans of black beans here, which I can now just go by the handful. You're like, how do you measure out? Well, I did 1 handful and then another handful and then another handful until it was all gone. That's how I figured it out. So that layers up in there. Also, this called for cilantro on top. Man, I already ate all my cilantro. So that's not happening. But that's okay because it's topped with salsa. And if you get a fresh salsa or a pico de gallo, same concept. Pumpkin seeds. Oh, so pumpkin seeds, when we started doing more of the whole plant-based thing, I actually have found that I crave pumpkin seeds. So unusual, but they're high in protein. So probably when my body needs what I would have used to think was meat, pumpkin seeds do the trick. They also add a really fun crunch. Lime juice. 2 tablespoons. You can see that I'm totally measuring that. Paprika. So we're still using this smoked paprika. I'm going to just tell you, I have not seen a difference in if it's smoked or not. I'm sure there is one. I'm sure that I have a weak palate or something. But if you just are able to buy the regular paprika in bulk and you're cooking a lot, I wouldn't bother with the smoked. That is my non-professional opinion. Somehow I think my salt got a wrong lid on it, so I'm going to do it that way. And then this last part to go on is going to be these roasted veggies. Let me see if my pan is still blazing hot. I probably do not want to pick up that whole pan. So probably what I'm going to do is just go ahead and grab some and then bring them over. It's probably safest, but those are going to sprinkle out on top. Look how beautiful. So I'm going to mess with your view for a minute. But this is like, I couldn't wait to make this salad because I just knew it's going to be so beautiful. I'm going to block your view again. Forgive the blocking. And this one too is like a spatula full for you, a spatula full for you. I just keep moving them around, trading. And all of the vegetables were roasted, all like layered together. So I don't have to worry, like, is somebody getting not enough of one or something like that? It's not an issue. So that goes. We're almost there with our roasted veggies. It's so pretty. I just could not wait. And so there it is. So what happens then is you're just going to ultimately toss that and then serve it with salsa. But how beautiful is that? I'm going to put it out of the way. So excited about that. There is a recipe, just to say, in the flavor cookbook for a salsa. You can guess. I don't have time for all that, so I'm not going to do it. But from this point, once this here has thickened up a little bit, we're then going to be able to pour it into those pie pans and then put the filling on top and bake it in the oven. So I think I had it going at 22, 45, 26, 27. So technically we're ready. I would say it still is a little wet, probably because I'm doing such a large batch. So it's probably worth it for me to give it just a minute. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be right back with you. We're back, and we are so close. So I went ahead and let that go another 5 minutes or so. I divided everything into 3 pie plates, and I've started spreading the masa harina, this cornmeal. It's almost like putting a little bit of cornbread on top. I'm not going to lie, I have some fears that these are really full and that they're going to spill over in the oven. So here's a second one. You see it doesn't go all the way to the end. That's also true in their picture, so I took the cue from them. And I thought I would just show you one, because no need for you to see them all. So each of them had the same amount, 3/4 cup of the cornmeal, 3/4 cup of the masa harina, a 1/3 cup of almond flour, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 cup of baking powder. The directions say to drop it in dollops. This helps you to spread it, is the reason for that. And I'm using a spatula. You could use a spoon, but I'm going to need a spatula. And why dirty more dishes than you need to? So the great thing about a spatula, too, is it so nicely gets everything out of the bowl. So from that point, going back to our sensory experience, you may feel like you need to get your fingers involved from time to time. That's okay. Mine are very clean. I was just washing dishes. So we go ahead. And then the directions say to cover and bake at 350 for 30 minutes. And I think you want that to be a firm 30. If you start going for an hour, you're going to get some bubbling. This will definitely go over. But there's a good chance I'll put these on a cookie sheet so that if they do boil over, I don't have to worry about cleaning out the oven. I can clean off the cookie sheet. But that is that. So you then end up serving this beautiful Mexican chopped salad with salsa and dishing up your tamale pie with salsa. And that's your meal for the night. And of course, if you didn't have time to make both, serve it with chips. Do something else. Like be your own creative self. But I will cover these. I'll bake them at 350, and that's the end of dinner. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. We'll see you again soon.